Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I am Callan, this is Matt.
Hello.
And this is Evan.
Every guy.
Episode summary, Matt.
Yeah, this is Avatar: The Last Airbender, Book 3, episode... No, that's not right. Episode 6, right?
6. Yes, sorry.
The Avatar and the Firelord.
That's my bad.
Yeah.
It's okay. The Avatar and the Firelord.
I had one job.
Yeah.
The episode where we finally learn Roku's backstory and we kind of sort of learn how this war started, kind of.
I mean, yeah.
It only took him 3 seasons to get to this, but hey, better than late than never, I guess.
Hey, you know what? He knew that if he said this in season 1, Aang would forget by now. So he saved. Because Aang is 12, man. Roku's been there and done 12. He knows all that. So anyway, yeah, it is that story. It's the origin story for the previous Avatar and of course the Firelord, as you could probably guess from the title.
Not the most imaginative for this one, but it works in like a thematic level. So
yeah,
but it
it's
opens
like
up
one of those episodes with a specific goal and it does everything it needs to do. You know?
For
Exactly,
sure.
Yeah, and
sure.
nice and artfully as well in this one. It's not just kind of point A to point B. Lots of drama, lots of visual touches to this one, which I really appreciate.
It's the way you do a flashback right. You know, you don't
Absolutely.
you reveal what's necessary. You don't bog it down, and you go at a pace that everyone can follow.
And the first thing I need to do is, I think I said on camera at some point.
Yeah, you need to apologize to Avatar Roku.
Yeah, I
Matt.
need to apologize to Roku. He does need the solstice. He doesn't need it to appear when it's really important, or in Aang's dream to tell him, hey, you should go to my house so I can continue talking to you. He doesn't need it for that, which is what confused me in my memory. But he does need the solstice to do like this whole...
He needed it for the PowerPoint presentation. He needed to be able to provide visuals. So
Does he, though? Because, I mean, so he needs that, or Aang needs to be trapped in the Avatar state at the time. Okay, all right.
Basically, that
okay, because there was nothing solstice about that episode, I'm sure. I'm quite sure.
Presumably it's because...
Another one of those cases where the rules are kind of flexible.
Yeah, but it works and it's beautiful, so who cares? But yeah, so he gets that vision from Roku, which kind of says, "Go to my home, Aang, and I'll give you this spiritual
You must
journey."
go to the Dagobah system.
Yeah, and at the exact same time, because of course these two always have perfect parallels. Zuko receives a scroll from Myro.
You know what?
Presumably just decides that
somehow
that's the time to send it.
I think because Iroh's all in touch with the spirits, I think he gets like the same dream that Roku's like, hey, I'm in your dreams now. You need to go tell that great grandson of mine something because destiny. And it's like, oh, you're right, Roku. You know, and then he, I don't know how he got
pulls out a brick in his prison and goes,
that was a little bit. Was he carrying that when he was arrested? I mean, he like just in case Zuko was like, hey, you're the crown prince now. Here,
where do you hide it? You know?
Yeah, you know, let's not.
I like to envision that was a White Lotus situation. The White Lotus got that to him in his prison cell.
Yeah, that's totally. That makes a lot more sense.
But yeah,
although I will say, Matt, what you brought up earlier, that actually does kind of raise a question. Can Avatar spirits appear to non-avatars?
Yeah,
they can appear in front of them,
technically,
not to them in dreams or anything that we've seen, but they can visually.
They usually use the current one as a conduit because Kyoshi did it in the. I forget the name of the episode, but you know the one. And Roku did it to Zhang, but through Aang. Like Zhang was like hallucinating Aang, and Aang was just like talking blah blah and didn't realize what Zhang was really seeing, which was Roku's presentation. So it happens. It definitely happens. Yeah.
For very dramatic short bursts.
But see, in that episode, right? Didn't no, never mind. Wait a minute. You could cut this, right? If this turns out to be like a horribly embarrassing recollection, didn't Roku see them in the spirit world once? Didn't he see Aang riding with?
I saw Fang fly past with
That's right.
Yeah. So he's at least spiritually attuned, and that was kind of never really touched on aside from that. Not counting
because he's been there, because he's been to the spirit world. We know that we don't know anything about that. I don't think, but we know that happened. Maybe he explained that in Korra. Can't remember. I haven't seen those episodes in a million years. But I
don't recall him explaining anything there. But yeah, he just when he goes there basically. So he's got that connection. But probably not enough to like cue into the Avatar's like timings on it. So he knew it was a solstice. He knew it was a solstice, so he knew he was talking to he'd be talking to Roku at that point.
Yes. Yeah.
So Zuko gets the letter and telling him that he needs to learn his family history, and then he goes to, I guess, the family history room or whatever of the fire temple.
They called it like the Dragon Bone Catacombs or something like that.
Yeah,
right? Like,
the Red Keep
with this
dungeon.
place that.
Which is actually really
what
easy
I thought
to
was
break
hilarious
into
about
when
that.
you think about it.
Well, yeah, the first all you need to be is a firebender and have access to the palace. So, but I mean, he is in line to be Firelord, so I mean, who's going to tell him no? But what I thought was funny is they have that place, like the Dragon Bone Catacombs, and his first thought is to go sit and stare at his family portraits and wonder, instead of like, hey, I'll just go to the place where all the knowledge is kept. Yeah,
he kind of just sits and ponders and has a little bit of Zuko brooding for a moment. And I loved Azula coming in, just getting that random jab in as well, as to make sure they get your good side. And it's like,
I know, come on, this Azula. Is like directly.
She has like 3 lines in this episode, and they're all memorable as usual.
Directly after the family bonding episode on the beach. So it's like I stand by the fact that she is just evil, but there we go. Proof. And then so the gang, they show up on Roku's island, which I don't remember if it has a name.
It's basically Pompeii at this point.
Yeah, and Toph just gets the usual scan of the terrain and realizes there's a village just turned to dust down or just cemented,
covered in
buried.
Yeah.
And Aang obviously goes to meditate and meet Roku. This is where the kind of stories start to converge, because Zuko begins to sit down and read the scroll inside his little crypt, and
Sozin's personal journals.
Getting his
or scrolls, I should say.
Final testament of Sozin, basically. Yeah. And they kind of the stories converge. It's not confirmed how much of the details that Roku is showing to Aang Zuko is reading, because obviously he won't have all of them in the same amount. But for the most part, we'll just talk about it as though it's the same thing, because it effectively is. Any details?
I mean, it is kind of implied he is telling the story, but it's like what details he can't understand, or
there's a particular stretch where they're away from each other for 12 years just as a start,
right?
Just to start.
Presumably,
so I'm sure
Roku would have told him the stories anyway, but you just kind of take it as implied how much of it is actually being seen by them. But the important beats are all in sync for each. So
in those 12 years, he was just getting a detailed outline of what Sozin's plan was. That Roku never heard.
Step A. Step 1. Convince Roku to join me. Step 2.
So so the flashback starts with them as like teenagers.
Roku
very charming. Roku and Sozin, were best friends, which of course shocks Aang, to hear originally. This was obviously way before the war started, so it's a nice little look. Again, one of the things this episode, like one of the themes of this episode, I would say, is it does at least kind of make an attempt to show that at one point in history, the Fire Nation weren't all assholes, so to speak. So, and I appreciate that. And Aang even we'll talk about that obviously at the end of the episode, but Aang even comes to a similar conclusion. But I do like that, and it does kind of show that. With Roku and Sozin, like there was actually a real bond there, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, it puts the effort into humanizing the Fire Nation as a culture and as a people, which is the start of this season or this book has done a good job of doing throughout. But in addition to that, and I think more powerfully, it humanizes Roku as well, because he's at this point he's just been that kind of wise mentor figure that has just been, Aang, you must do this thing on the solstice or whatever because it's necessary, and a great character and dramatic and striking and brilliant, but we've not really seen his more softer human side, his youth, for one.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a good exploration of that. We get a lot of personality, a lot of traits that Aang can kind of more relate to personally, kind of see, the avatars aren't just these beacons of paragon beacons of perfection that have no flaws and are always know what they're doing, etc. They are people like me. They just take a while to get to that point.
I like that they showed all that without showing him being like a bumbler.
Exactly.
I mean, he kind of lost the fight and also was ignored by like the girl of his dreams, but not in like a over the top lame cartoon way where it was just believable.
It's realistic. It's not like going out of its way to be like, oh, isn't this funny?
Exactly. But it was funny. It wasn't trying too hard, but it managed it because it was just simple and human and relatable. All the things that both the Yang and the viewer needs to see to properly appreciate the character. So it was really cool. Even the kind of similarities with Yang, where he's kind of making the same kind of motions, and falls backwards in the ground, and like the smiles and everything. It was very well executed.
Yeah. And we don't actually get his exact age during these flashbacks.
No, we do. We know.
We do?
It's they turned 16. At the time of the fight, typically they were 15.
Sorry.
That's when the Avatar is normally like told they're the Avatar, but Aang, it was a different case because there was a war on.
Yeah, which always seems a little bit late to me. Like I always think that. By the way, everything you think you want to do with your life, you're not gonna be able to do that. The Avatar.
I think it's
16 is usually a time where you're kind of starting to come into your own a bit. So and make plans for the future.
You're finding your identity, you're setting up your life, you're getting ready with at least the idea of it, the projection in mind, and then ripped away from you. Like just a few years before, that would probably be healthier.
Yeah.
There's something I think this I doubt was entirely planned, but it's just so it's implied. I think that the goal he happens to spend 4 years learning each of the other ones. Presumably he also spent 4 on fire before he ever went anywhere, right?
Yeah, from like 12 onwards.
So if you're doing it that way, you have 16 years of your life, 16 years of Avatar training, and then the rest of your life being who you are. You know what I mean? Or like just the Avatar that you are. It's like, they have everything's like divisible by 4. In this world.
4 elements,
yeah. Also, it's worth noting that him and Sozin share a birthday. Actually, speaking of which.
Yeah, that's a nice little touch they have. It kind of brings that the show likes to have the parallels and the connections between the most dramatic figures in the story, and I think this is another example of it. It's not really necessary, but I like the setup it gives us, if for no other reason than we have the scene of them being in that same ceremonial spot and having that same reveal. Even to the point where Sozin's like, "What is something wrong with my father?" Because that's the obvious assumption when a bunch of old sages run at you as the Fire Prince.
Although. But Dad clearly doesn't care about the birthday party because he's not.
Yeah, he's not there. Exactly. Classic Fire.
I guess some traditions
runs in the family.
Just too embedded.
Yeah, runs in the family.
But I will say, I do like how. Oh, sorry.
The only thing I was going to know is that the follow up to that is the immediate reaction when everyone starts bowing. I love that Sozin Balal's on side.
Oh, I was literally going to say just that.
Yeah.
How he's initially accepting of his friend's position. He's not immediately antagonistic towards it.
Yeah, he wasn't jealous. It was just, oh god, okay, yeah, of course, respect.
I like that. But I also do like that he is the very last to bow. Everyone else is just, he's taking it in almost. And it's not played as jealousy or any of it.
It's just a human reaction. It's, what? My friend's the Avatar? Yeah. What? Right, yeah. And he also doesn't bow to the same extent of everyone else.
I was just going to say that he doesn't bow deeply as
because he is the crown prince and he's his friend. But at the same time, he's going to kneel for him, because that's what you do in that kind of moment. So that was really cool. Every layer of that was very well handled and really set up the kind of bridge point between just them being friends and them being friends while he's the Avatar, leading obviously into the trajectory of the rest of their arcs. That was very cool, very effective.
And then after he leaves, we get this little montage of Roku, learning the other elements. And it is interesting. I like the little detail how he points out, water was especially difficult for him, which again makes sense because it's his polar opposite element. And I like how that kind of feeds into, it's like another parallel with Aang, because with Aang in particular, Earth is his opposite and it's much more difficult for him as opposed to the others. So I like that little continuity there.
It works well between those two as having that same similarity, but also the fact that other avatars we find out later in both Korra and other books, it's not just the opposite element, it's the opposite mentality, which is often the case, the opposite element, but for these particular characters, it's some characters that's not the case. Korra being spirituality, for example, with air and stuff. So I like that it's not just that simple, but when it happens to work and to be that simple, it's very cool. Also worthy of note, the water spending master is the only one who doesn't get named and told that it's like a lifelong friend. So
we had a little bit of a cheat. Well, we had a cheat with Gyatso though, because we already know him, and then that was really done very well because that does look like the same character's expressions, just like very young. So that was cool. Considering how little there is to differentiate him on like a facial level from everyone else there, you can kind of it's something about the way they did his eyes and how they gave him a subdued little smile. When he, like at the end after they'd crash landed and he'd blown the hair out of his face and he just kind of like he looked like a little like junior master monk.
Exactly.
But it's a good way of getting that character across without heavy reliance on dialogue.
Yeah. And what I will say for the water master, at the very least, I found his character design more distinctive. Earthbending Master was named, but I swear I've seen that man before in the show. He looks just like every other Earthbending master or general or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's that guy's great grandfather too.
Was it Sud? If it's Sod, I'm gonna laugh my ass off because that's just
I think it was Sud. No, I think it was Sud.
But so that was funny. It just noted that he was the only one who didn't get to be a lifelong friend with the Avatar. So apparently they weren't quite as compatible as they could have been.
And I like that. I like that Roku, like when he's young, he isn't depicted as being especially imaginative. You know what I mean? He seems fairly
brute force kind of thing. Like,
yeah.
Here is my power, which works well with a fire bending avatar, I think.
Or even just in his sort of view of the world, or you know what I mean? There's nothing especially avatarish about him at the start, so I can buy that, like, especially when it comes to something like water bending, it being his natural opposing element, but also maybe just not having that versatile of like a personality or outlook, you know. So of course he would struggle with that, and things like Earth picked it up right away. It looked like, you know, like exactly. I mean, you don't know that, but the implication is that he didn't struggle with it as much to me.
And that translates as well to when he's getting the news from Sozin, when he's talking about how
I was gonna say
I want to introduce change. That no, there's 4 for a reason. It should stay as 4. He doesn't even like. He doesn't even. It's not obviously that he'd be approving of it anyway, but it's not like you think, how do you want to manifest? It's like, no, this is the way it should be, and that's where it stays. He seems like a very, not necessarily traditionalist, but a very Puritan kind of plain avatar.
Do we want to?
Which has obviously been influenced by his travels around the world. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, was there anything before that, or do we want to just?
Aside from the fact that Sozin, you know, it's the wedding, obviously, so it's Roku's wedding with Janine, so that was noteworthy. I love the line. I love the line where he says, "When love is real, it finds a way." That's a brilliant quote from Roku.
I was gonna say that was very Chinese
like, tell
fortune cookie to me.
It's not particularly a truism like most I love, but I just like the line anyway. It's I don't know, it's very Roku. I liked it, but also it's his wedding. Could Sozin not give him a day to enjoy it?
I did. I docked him points before the evil when I saw that, and I always remembered that he interrupted the wedding with this, but I kind of forgot that he literally is like in the middle of like everything. Not even like it's all dying down, you know, like everyone's going schmoozing, like, you know, saying goodbye, hello, or like whatever. It's like Yeah,
he doesn't just take him to the back. He leaves the entire ceremony and like, come here, let me tell you about my plans for world domination.
We literally cut to them being on top of a roof, you know, like far away.
Well, now this
very beautiful shot, though.
I was going to say the beautiful sky in this one, or in this particular scene, is gorgeous and great framing. With
the silhouette of the pillars and everything as well. Just that one frame.
If you want to give the illusion of importance, have somebody talking in front of pillars, you know, above everything. Like, they could be talking about the weather, and it's like, oh, this is like a world-ending conversation right here.
The pillars.
I like that because it's like you can almost interpret, you know, because this is the scene where he's talking about we should spread our truth across the world, and the fact that the scenery is so beautiful, you can almost imagine that being kind of like a reference to like, yes, he wants to spread this beauty everywhere, or at least that's how I interpreted it.
Exactly, yeah, and it's not quite that. Obviously, Roku is detecting the undertones and the danger and the potential threat, etc., etc. But Sozin isn't like saying, "I want to conquer the world with my power." He is presenting it as a share our bounty, our you know, influence and our positives.
I also like
which I actually kind of wish they kind of explored a little bit more in this episode.
Well, yeah,
still,
I do like, real quick before it gets lost, that they had different voice actors for their different ages. That was cool, because so oftentimes that you would just get, you know, slapped with the same voice actor throughout the whole thing, but they kind of sold that. And they don't really explain Sozin's motives, but that's okay to me. I would have liked a little bit more, but what's there, what you just said, like, you know, about he believes so much in his nation's greatness, that to almost this, see, it's not, fanatical? It doesn't spell this out. Yeah, it doesn't spell out whether he started it or whether he was also a victim of that mentality from being brought up in a tradition like that. But it's implied that whatever was there, he really, like, you know, like cranked the gas onto high, like when he was in the position to do so. But yeah, just because we know he was human, and I think it's almost like, I'm trying to work with this idea in my own fictional setting. I like the idea of trying to force a story where there isn't one. He's looking at all this that doesn't really mean anything, but how nice it fits. You know, like we have the same birthday. We came into the world together. We're best friends. I was always supposed to be Firelord. You're Avatar now. I mean, when has this ever happened? Like we can change everything, right? And what exactly that means, ironically, I think to start off with, maybe if Roku had said yes, there's no war. Not really. You've got the Dr. Manhattan. You've got the nuclear armament. You've got like you've got the deterrent, right? Like you can't challenge us. Like I'm Firelord A, that's already hard, and I've got the Avatar. You know, if he had said yes, it's over. You know, there's no war. So he wasn't necessarily picturing all that. He was picturing probably a more smooth, like, you know,
transition, spreading.
Yeah, transition. Yeah. Of course, it also shows his lack of awareness and vision, because he obviously didn't expect the no. And that's the thing that I wish they had spent a little bit more time with, is why would he think this? And Roku, as we alluded to a little bit before, he doesn't really explain his position. Like you called him a little puritanical about it almost. And I agree. Like he's not, it's not like a horrible failure, but it is like he shuts the conversation down as opposed to explaining why the nation should be for, or why this is so wrong. He doesn't say, he just says that they're supposed to be for. And then he's like, I don't want to hear about this anymore. And that's it. Which I understand.
He's right.
To go that route. But he's Avatar.
He should have had more nuance to it. And obviously.
And he says.
Yeah.
He says it was his first real test as Avatar. So he knows that. You know. In retrospect, he knows that.
And on top of that, he left it alone. Like he didn't pay enough attention. He wasn't monitoring. And also he did say that he basically spent all his free time living on his island home whenever there wasn't a crisis. So he clearly wasn't keeping his eye on the ball as much as he should have done.
He said, to be fair, he said that like the last 25 years of his life. So maybe, because there's obviously a gap in between, you know. So
it was a few years before he noticed that he'd gone ahead with the plan.
Yeah, he said many years is what he said. And
I also like the way they age up for each of this. Like the actual visual design of each of these characters gradually increases throughout the episode, and that one effective.
That's the best one for Sozin. That looks like a badass.
Oh yeah,
that part right. Yeah, when he's got little streaks of gray in his beard. Yeah, and he's got the Ron Perlman voice.
Yeah. He gets absolutely bitch slapped by the Avatar, but visually,
absolutely,
it looks great.
Because they cut to like the Earth Kingdom getting occupied, and obviously Roku isn't a fan of that, so he goes to confront Sozin.
I love that.
Sozin again tries to kind of get him to be like on his side again. It's like, no, I'm the Firelord, you obey me, and then Roku's like, no, you can't do this, and then Sozin attacks him, and then they fight, but it's not really much of a fight.
Oh no, But first of all, I love that he was out clearly in the Earth Kingdom, and then just flew straight to the Fire Palace on his dragon. It was like,
he's like, what the hell is this? No, thank you. Just be like dragon lines straight back to the.
You can't say Roku isn't determined.
I mean,
he was obviously he was in high gear. He was like he was using airbending to get there faster. It's like, dragon, you're too slow. You know, like he shows up that he's very charitable, and after the fact he calls this a battle. Because I didn't see him for 25 years after a battle. It wasn't really a battle, but
not really. Yeah.
And also, I like the fact that he goes into the level he did. He had him beaten and then destroyed the royal chambers with the Avatar state. Like it wasn't like he needed that to win. He'd beaten his friend. It was the fight was over, and he's like, let me show you what's going to happen if you don't listen to me this time. And then boom. Showing that little bit of a Kyoshi face with the whole, I will end you if you try this again. If you step one more toe out of line.
Just another good way of showcasing, Roku's power.
In the finale, doesn't he say that he should have? Like, isn't he still where he is? Yeah.
If I had done that, the war would never have happened. Essentially, So, he's in line with Kyoshi on that one.
Mm-hmm. Which I mean, in fairness to them, because they didn't have a turtle lion thing to teach them some random skill, like it makes total sense.
Oh yeah, they are correct. Without the ability to remove his bending, he's too much of a threat. Absolutely, especially with the comet. But yeah. The ending makes sense with him. But yeah, that happens. It's another time skip. Yeah, the time skips are done well, by the way. It could have been very like jarring. Okay, this moving on to the next, moving on to the next. But it's kind of artfully done with the.
I'm sure that
like a smooth transition. You know,
I'm sure there was like a lot of cutting room floor stuff with this script where they're like, this would be nice, but we don't have time. You know,
exactly. So and the pacing of it when they did change and what they did show was well done. Obviously, this is an episode we could have done with being 2, and it would have been greater. But with what they did with it. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I've always stood by the Boiling Rock could have been 1 because it's highly repetitive what they do with the actual plot progression in that one. A great episode in its way, but it could have been just 1.
Would have given more time for this, but either way, they didn't have any waste. You know, it wasn't like this scene could have been cut to give room for this. This episode by itself is well executed. And we get to the home. He loses or just drops the headpiece from the side cabinet when he gets out, but he doesn't get time to put it.
Did it show that? I didn't notice that.
As he runs out of the room, it falls off his bedside.
I just assumed that his wife had it like after the blaze or whatever, but I didn't notice that. So
no,
that's cool.
lands on the floor.
Obviously, he's not wearing it during any of the actual
it's a nice
fighting.
It's a nice little touch because it's the one time when he's not really Avatar Roku. He's not on his peak. He's past his prime. He's not on point. He fails.
To be fair,
he's in front of his friend who sees he's not wearing the thing. All that stuff.
I don't think he could have handled it though. Like even if he was in his prime, they sell it as like
I just mean like the disconnect between having that thing. Even the fact that Sozin will see him and think, oh, you're not wearing the headpiece. The little things like that it was a nice little subtle touch added on. But yeah, the actual fight though, I mean, like Ang says, you're fighting a volcano and you're winning until it goes wrong. It's very
well. Second one goes off, so it's like I mean, and he's like decrepit, old, well, maybe not in Avatar land.
I was going to say, prime,
but
Avatar
still,
standards.
yeah.
I love by the way at the end when just before I forget when Zuko is like he dies. Earlier when Azula says he dies of old age, Zuko's like, that's not possible. No one dies of old age. It's like, did
you say that?
No, but in his head, he's like he's curious because of the story. But I was making a joke at the fact that no one in this bloody world seems to have any old age issues.
Okay, yeah, like really what it is just he's going, if that's too stupid for anyone to leave me a secret message about in the middle of the night.
Exactly,
really
but it's just in my head, it's funny to imagine him like, that's not right. No one dies of old age in this world. It must have been murder or a natural disaster.
Ironically, like he's pretty damn old when we see him, and he didn't die either. So
exactly.
So they tried. The volcano's still going. Sozin shows up and actually helps Roku for a bit there. We see them doing that, but then obviously the volcano still explodes and Roku inhales all this poisonous gas and he's on his last leg, and
it's the comical how he's running like, don't inhale the poisonous gas, Sozin, and then immediately inhales poisonous gas. Like that was
I didn't.
That was
I never laughed at
on
that.
the nose. It wasn't funny.
No, I didn't think so.
I don't mean it was comical as in laugh out loud in that moment, but just the fact they chose that moment to have that shout out. He could have shouted that to his wife earlier, and then it happened later or something.
22 minutes. And so you gotta get the details in there because of the commercials, right? And the reason why that works for me, let's just back up, and I'll get to that point. I really love the animation throughout this whole bit. I like the animation in general, of course, in all of Avatar, especially this latter season, and into Korra. Like that's where they really started getting into the sweet spot. But even little things like when the two of them, or that scene like leading up to it where they're scrambling down the mountainside, that is so badass. Like the animation on that, like that looks like people struggling down a hill. And it's just the physical motion of like the walking. But I love that before that he saved Sozin from falling, and then he saves him repeatedly with the gusts of airbending, and that's the reason why he gets blasted in the face. So it's like it is a little bit, it is a kid show. Like we'll come back to that too, because like when it comes to the moral,
moral,
like let's explain the moral, which is also true in the next episode, by the way. But more poignantly done in The Runaway, I would say. But yeah, it's very, very Sozin. He comes in and he earns himself like a lot of credit just by showing up, and then he helps. So that's more. Then he almost gets toasted a few times, and Roku bails him out. And then when he's in the position to do the same, he's like,
opportunistic. No,
I'm off. I'm out of here.
Yeah, no, this is too convenient for me to not take the chance. I liked how human it was. Not obviously good, but
it wasn't calculated.
He turned up,
and the look on his face,
exactly,
he's already ashamed. He knows that some part of this is wrong as he's doing it.
And he didn't turn up to take this opportunity. He turned up to help and genuinely was happy to help his friend. They had that vibe. It was human in that they were genuinely enjoying being on the same team again. It was like, why couldn't we do it before? And yet still takes that opportunity when it's presented to him by fate.
And what's really cool about because this whole thing is really underscoring, surprise, Zuko, your great granddad is the Avatar, but that's a Zuko move. That's book 2 end of Zuko. Like that's like he is both of their great grandson. So it's good to see that part of it, because that's the humanistic quality. That's the thing that makes Zuko a good character. That's the reason always why almost everyone on the planet is going to immediately say Zuko's the best character, because he's got the most humanity and like the best arc. Like he's the most believable. All the other ones have, great shades around them and things to like, but he's the one that he's more soulful, and more I always question people when they like relate to somebody like say Azula. I don't buy it most of the time. I like by and large I can buy into like relating to an aspect of her character.
Yeah, exactly. Elements of it.
The same, but I can also say the same thing about Toph. I don't really believe that anybody I've ever met is really Toph. Like she's kind of too badass to be like for me to meet one in real life. I mean, every now and then you might meet somebody who's got a sprinkling of that, but people see themselves in little bits and pieces. With Zuko, I think like the meter is a lot more full. Like you just see a lot more of yourself in him, no matter who you are. Because he's human.
The struggle, it's just that struggle with life and doing what's right and figuring out what you want, all of that kind of stuff. It's a very, very relatable story for anyone, particularly in the age range that most people who are watching this show. It's family friendly. You can enjoy this at any age, but most people were watching this in their childhood or their teen years, where it really landed for them. So it's a very effective character. But yeah, just
before we move on,
yeah.
I just wanted to just say this a little bit. It's extremely subtle, and I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but the last element we ever see Roku use before he dies is air, which, obviously, and Aang being the next avatar, being an air nomad. I don't know if that was done on purpose, but I like that little connection,
I think it could be. He was using it a lot throughout that fight. Yeah. And also, even way back earlier, when he bent all the elements after he'd completed his training, he did them in order. He didn't start with, I think he started with water. Yeah, and then from there, it goes water, earth, fire, air, right? And so that's
he uses it a lot as well throughout the entirety of the episode. Like just in the battle with Sozin, he knocks down the pillars with it. He uses it to summon him, and fly himself up in the air to his eye level. The large even at the very start of the volcano situation, uses the dome of air to cast some of the gas away, or the ash away. It's some of the most powerful airbending displays we've seen in the show. Blowing
up the fucking temple.
Yeah. It's up there. So I think it's probably intentional they went for that stylistic choice, just because, if for no other reason than Aang doesn't get to do that kind of thing very often, because it's not in his nature and he's not fully realized yet. Even though he's a master of air, he doesn't use that much like power by choice.
He doesn't do the gentler side. I think is also a big part of that, because he obviously could do a lot more than he does many times.
We've seen that he can cut loose and stuff, but he very rarely does. And with that touch of the Avatar state, he hasn't mastered that part yet. But just some other notes of the animation stuff as well. The airbending in general was beautifully animated in this, especially with how it correlates to the reacted to with the ash being pulled around it. The glow of the lava and the molten rock was beautiful. Because that can be really garish and blinding, but they had it muted.
No, it never is. Not an Avatar. That was like one of the standouts of book 1 was when Roku showed up and took down his temple with that.
Exactly. They've really kept the muted kind of glow down, so it's just enough to provide that really awesome ambience and not overpower the rest of the color palette, while still being present and new, because it's not very exactly a thing you get to see in Avatar very often. It's rare they're around lava, so it's very cool.
I don't think that they said when the guy died, like when Sozin died, but I like that he helped cool a volcano with a technique very like what Iroh uses to redirect. I've always noticed that, like even way back when.
I meant to mention
very
actually,
similar, like movement.
Yeah, we see early on in the episode that he's aware of some of the basic forms of the other bending, which
he
I think
imitates them.
That's definitely seems to be, even the way he acts and fights initially with Sozin in just the sparring. There, you can definitely see this is a man who understands the other cultures, which makes sense both because he's a royal, but also he's alive in a time when they were united.
There you see, Azula is his great granddaughter, right? He keys in on the weakness of like the ankle. She just did that in like the beach. You see that kind of thing, and you see him. So he's been studying them not as respect, but as how to take them down.
Well, absolutely. Not necessarily soft respect, but I mean just acknowledging the lessons in them, both just for weaknesses or finding weaknesses, but also just learning their strengths. I mean, and it makes sense in a world sense as well, because the world is united at this point. They're not at war, so there's going to be a lot more cultural connections and relations between them. So especially between the Fire Nation, anyway. So it was little touches like that, and the fact that he then uses that almost waterbending style technique to push the heat of the volcano away was very cool. It almost like beat for beat the motion of Iroh's lightning redirection.
Well, that's why I said I don't know when they specify if he died, because it seems a little far fetched that Iroh could have met him because his dad was so old.
Yeah.
So I don't really see that, but commonality. And he could have known that, like, he could have used that as a start off for like his own interest in doing the same thing before he got all White Lotusy.
Exactly.
Because Iroh to me is the other side of it. Iroh is the one who respects other cultures and like would learn from them. But I maintain Sozin is obviously doing it as like strategy. Even if it was just like subconsciously.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely more on that bent. Didn't mean to imply otherwise. But yeah, so that was a very cool touch. Just little things they didn't need to show, and they just did because it was the Avatar team. They put detail into these things.
Also, I remember when this show was first airing, like literally everybody else in like the history of like the Fire Nation had more respect in the fans' mind than Ozai because of things like that. Like we just assume, oh, Sozin is like this great genius. Did you hear what Azula said about him? Oh, and look at all this. He knows all this from like the other cultures. Ozai, he's just stupid. He just sits there. He's stupid. You know, like I mean, it's like he's one of the greatest firebenders we ever see. I mean, he is a bit mental, but I mean, look at his family. Like, I mean, it's like I don't really. I know I was downplaying it. I know that. I'm hardcore on the he's crazy as hell. Like, if anything, I think that they're all nuts. You guys were a lot more charitable to Azulan than I was. When in our talk about that. But yeah, no, I really like that. Those sorts of world elements coming in and playing such a great role, like on a character side of things, you know, without feeling forced. So that's really great.
Just to note as well, because I saw it in the notes, when Roku bends all four elements, he makes the mention this is the result of bitter work as well. I enjoyed the
obviously reference. I wonder if that episode won awards, because like I don't think that they are usually like calling out the titles of their former episodes. They might have been.
It could have literally just been an accident. We don't know, but it was effective though. I think I like the fact that it was just rated that to the four elements, and that was obviously when they were last properly explored in the show. So that was cool.
So I mean, Roku, we see him die, and then it cuts to it immediately cuts to Aang, you know, being born. You know,
which I was a little bit like with Fang. It was like, hey, just maybe show up a little earlier,
or even in that moment, the whole way pick him up and leave, because he didn't have to sit there.
The whole way. The whole way that Sozin left was his dragon showed up right there, like where they just are. So I was like, okay.
Slow on the uptake, Fang. But also, when he rise as he does, he still had plenty of time to swoop down, pick him up, and go. I mean, he circles fully around him before he, like, come on, Fang. But the idea, I guess, is that he's already.
But it is a sweet moment. It is a sweet moment.
Right.
Yeah, what they're going for.
I get the idea is
Fang's loyalty till the end.
Yeah, and I get the idea is that Roku's dying regardless of the ash in that moment as well. He's already choking and the lava and everything. So I assume that he's already dead, and Fang kind of knows that is the implication. But it was a cool moment. We're just nitpicking.
I don't know. I mean, I actually wasn't sure about that, just because of how and how resilient people are in the world. I mean, he asked for help. I almost feel like he would have just been resigned if he had, you know. So I've always been. I like it more that he wasn't, because it makes Sozin's choice more effective, actually. But that is a preference thing.
When he's been down there for a while. But yeah, you're right. And just that moment, absolutely. But yeah, so that's the end of the backstory, right? Roku dies. That's the end. Aang is reborn, as you say, Evan. And he even gets to the point where it points out that it kind of shows that it's immediate. You know, Roku dies. Aang is born into the world with the Avatar spirit inside. So that's cool. That's like a little bit of a spiritual touch. And then we get to exactly. And then we get to, for as long as it can now. And then we get back to Zuko in the modern day, who's kind of like, what? This is the secret history, which, by the way, should have been called the history that everyone already knows.
I love that the truth is like pretty obvious if you just really thought about it. Like, I mean, well, okay, he must be like, have I ever heard about my mom's granddad? No. Oh, it must be this guy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what else could it possibly mean? It's like a multiple choice with only two options. You know, it's not this guy because he died in his sleep and he wrote his will and testament or whatever.
Even to the point that Iroh says, "You have two grandfathers, Zuko."
Let's hammer it in. But even that, and that was fair enough. Although we already talked about it, but like the crown just being like in his cell, that was a lot. Yeah. But then I really do like
the animation on Zuko's face though when he learns about
the slouching
Roku.
as well.
Like it's just like Like it's genuine. Like he can't believe it. And it's very interesting. And the implications of all of that are just kind of hitting him all at once. And it's really well done.
Just the fact that they make the choice to have him just looking down as well, that slouch with his hand, his hair over his face, and Ira are just sort of talking at him. It's very effective. Him like, oh my god, more. Why do I have to take on more? Kind of thing. And it will lead to the inevitable ending.
They never really touch on this in the show because I honestly don't really think they thought of it. But like I think that it is a thing in the comic books where they talk about how like that's the whole reason his mother was chosen to be although it was strange to me because she was going to be marrying the not intended to be in line for the throne prince, like the second born son. So. I don't know where they were really going with that, but that's why I don't think they really thought of it until they wrote that comic book. But it would have been nice to maybe, because like does Azula know that she's like a child of an Avatar line?
What a terrifying thought.
Yeah. But yeah, so like internal conflict turned on to 11.
And it was a little bit blunt with it, but nowhere near as bad as the gang's end of things. Where
it is a kid. It's a kid's show.
It is a kid's show.
It is literally like, let's debate what this is. Oh, they must be. It's like these people are born bad. It's like no, I don't think so. If anything, It's like,
but also, we're not exaggerating with that dialogue, by the way.
Yeah, literally how that happens.
Yeah.
But also, just the fact that it's not really the point as well. It's hammering a point in, but also isn't really confirming that's what.
Yeah,
it's
like Roku's it's like, oh no, that's not what I meant. I meant you have to kill the guy.
It's a spirit in the background. Like,
exactly.
But like I say, people will force what they see into a story. They'll already and so Aang uses it to justify his own morally more superior position, but practically and historically.
Exactly. But it's just funny.
I guess you could read into it as like, a lesson is ultimately, determined by, the person receiving it and how they also view the world. But again, it's like,
absolutely. But it's just like it's being very overly charitable. That wasn't the intent. It is just too oversimplified. Even if that was what they were going for, they should have hung the lantern and had some sort of like spin on it to make it clear that wasn't what the message was or something. Even if it was just Roku in the background, just kind of literally just shaking his head or looking somber or something. Just like the point was, I didn't kill him and I should have. That's what I had to give to you, Aang.
Yeah, like we come to that in the finale, But it's funny. But what works about it, if you want to, this is be really charitable. He wouldn't have really had the mindset that he needs to do what he ultimately does after he gets the spirit bending if he wasn't looking at the story this way at this point in time. So it makes sense in that like sort of holistic sense of like reinforcing who Aang is, and he gets the out that no other Avatar ever gets, where he's able to do this through spirit bending, right? So that's looking at it from like the benefit of hindsight. In the moment, I'm totally with you, and it's funny to think of like Roku going, oh no, why do I even get out of Avatar spirit bed? Like, it's like
what are my predecessors doing? Why aren't they helping out? Just because I was the immediate predecessor.
Never help. Yeah. Kyoshi she showed up to like ruin her own soiled name just to reinforce that I did that shit and I'd do it again too. Bye. And then Kurak, we didn't really know too much about him before the Kyoshi books, to be honest. And he just kind of showed up and is like, I sucked. I'm sorry. I'm no good.
I was too loosey goosey with it all.
Yeah, and then Yang Chen's like, I get it, but you're the Avatar, not an air nomad, so do your duty. And then the lion turtle's like, fuck all that. I got something for you.
Screw that noise.
We're going to have a lot to talk about when we get to
I've been preparing this for years, and just like finger pokes him in the forehead, like, take this. Like, no one else ever had this. Screw them.
Yeah. Like, where have you been? Well, I don't know.
Around.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there because that is long in the distance.
Not that far.
Not far anymore.
Two-parters
and
a random
not that
string
far
of
anymore.
Episodes, and then we're there.
Relatively speaking,
very true.
Like I said, we'll definitely have a lot to talk about when we get to that.
Absolutely, Deus Ex Lion Turtle.
Also, we skipped over the fact that Aang clearly shit himself in this episode.
Yes, I put that in the notes. That is in the notes. I put down specifically.
Oh my gosh,
Aang shits himself for some reason, but literally right there. So why is that in there? I get that it's Avatar humor, but that was so out of left field and against the tone.
You've always had a problem. you've always had a problem with Milo, and I say, look, this is the seeds of like. But they always obviously wanted to do that, and it was never ever appropriate. But this shows that that's But they did key up. They did tee up the fact that there are no bathrooms in the spirit world, because that was the first thing Sokka wanted, was a bathroom way back when. He did say that. He did say that. So that is continuity. But yeah. And
still, though, I mean, he'd been there for like 5 minutes as well at that point.
I know,
it wasn't like this is a 3-day long meditation.
The funniest
time
thing
it
to me
takes
about
Zuko
that, though,
to read the scroll at night.
But listen, he's sitting having like a whole like hours long meeting or whatever it is. Is the gang really just sitting around staring at him this whole time? Like, couldn't they have been looking at like anything else? They all happened to see that happen. Well, aside from Toph, but like she was aware.
To be fair, there's nothing else on the island, so what else? I mean, where are they gonna go?
I don't know.
The city's buried.
And Katara marries this boy later on as well. It's like she's gonna have that memory.
I know, and they spend the whole next episode where she's everybody's mom, including his, But anyway.
Yeah, but that's a point we couldn't possibly have missed and done without. So yeah, now you've heard our thoughts on Avatar, the Avatar and the Firelord. I am Callan, and I still don't have an outro.
This is Matt. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day.
Evan 95. We hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys later.
Goodbye.